Officer Marcus Rodriguez had promised to protect his wife Emma for the rest of their lives. But in their luxury overwater villa in the Maldives, surrounded by crystal-clear waters and complete isolation, those same hands that had sworn to protect her would become the instruments of her death. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more shocking true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. But let's go back to where it all began. The perfect wedding that would lead to the perfect crime. The St. Mary's Cathedral in downtown San Diego had never looked more beautiful. White roses cascaded from every pew. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the marble floors, and the afternoon sun streamed through stained glass windows, painting the altar in ethereal colors. It was the kind of wedding that every woman dreamed of, elegant, romantic, and seemingly perfect in every detail. Emma Rodriguez, radiant in her custom Vera Wang gown, walked down the aisle with tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. At 26, she was the picture of bridal perfection. Long auburn hair swept into an intricate updo adorned with pearls, green eyes sparkling with happiness, and a smile that could light up the entire cathedral. She had waited her entire life for this moment, for this man, for this perfect beginning to their forever. Waiting for her at the altar stood Officer Marcus Rodriguez of the San Diego Police Department, resplendent in his dress uniform. At 31, Marcus was everything Emma had ever wanted in a husband: tall, handsome, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see everything. His broad shoulders filled out his uniform perfectly, and the medals on his chest spoke of a decorated career in law enforcement. What the 300 wedding guests didn't know was that they were witnessing the beginning of a countdown to murder. The ceremony was flawless. Marcus's voice was strong and confident as he recited his vows, promising to love, honor, and protect Emma for the rest of their lives. The irony of those words would become apparent soon enough. But in that moment, surrounded by hundreds of guests and bathed in golden sunlight, they seemed like the most sincere promises ever spoken. "I promise to be your shield against the world," Marcus said, his blue eyes locked on Emma's face. "To protect you from any harm, to love you with every breath in my body, and to make you the happiest woman alive." Emma's response was equally heartfelt, her voice trembling with emotion as she promised to support Marcus through his dangerous career, to be his safe harbor after difficult days, and to build a beautiful life together. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was passionate and full of promise. The reception at the Grand Del Mar Resort was equally spectacular. Emma had spent months planning every detail: the orchid centerpieces, the 7-course dinner, the live jazz band that played their first dance song. Marcus had insisted on paying for everything, despite Emma's modest teacher's salary being sufficient for a smaller celebration. "Only the best for my wife," he had said, and Emma had been touched by his generosity, not recognizing it as the first sign of his need to control every aspect of their life together. During the reception, Marcus was the perfect groom. He danced with Emma's elderly grandmother, charmed her parents with stories from his police work, and gave a speech that brought tears to every eye in the room. He spoke about finding his soulmate, about how Emma had made him a better man, about their plans for the future. But what Emma didn't notice were the subtle signs that should have given her pause. The way Marcus's jaw tightened when her college friend Jake gave her a friendly hug. The possessive grip he maintained on her waist throughout the evening. The flash of anger in his eyes when the photographer asked Emma to pose alone for some bridal portraits. Emma's best friend Sarah had noticed, though, during a quiet moment in the bridal suite. She had pulled Emma aside with a concerned expression. "Em, can I ask you something?" Sarah said, her voice carefully neutral. "Have you ever seen Marcus angry? I mean really angry?" Emma laughed, adjusting her veil in the mirror. "Marcus doesn't get angry. He's the most even-tempered person I know." "Why would you ask that?" Sarah hesitated, then shook her head. "It's nothing. Sometimes I see something in his eyes when other men talk to you. It's probably just protective instinct." "He's a police officer," Emma replied. "He's trained to be protective. It's one of the things I love about him." Sarah had let the matter drop, but the unease remained. There was something about Marcus Rodriguez that didn't sit right with her, something beneath the perfect exterior that felt dangerous. As the evening wound down, Marcus and Emma prepared to leave for their honeymoon. They were flying to the Maldives the next morning. 2 weeks in paradise at the Four Seasons Resort landed Jaravu, staying in an overwater bungalow that cost more than Emma made in 3 months. The Maldives. Emma sighed dreamily as they drove home to their new apartment. I can't believe we're really going. Our own overwater villa in the middle of the Indian Ocean. It's like something out of a fairy tale. Marcus smiled, his hand resting possessively on her thigh. Nothing's too good for my wife. I want to give you everything, Emma. I want to take care of you completely. Just you and me, alone in paradise, with nothing but crystal clear waters for miles. The words should have been romantic, but there was something in Marcus's tone, a hint of ownership, of control, of isolation, that might have alarmed Emma if she hadn't been so caught up in the magic of her wedding day. As they fell asleep in their marriage bed for the first time, Emma felt like the luckiest woman in the world. She had married her Prince Charming. They were about to embark on the honeymoon of a lifetime in one of the world's most exclusive destinations, and their future stretched ahead of them bright with possibility. She had no way of knowing that in less than 2 weeks, she would be dead in the turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean, and that the man sleeping peacefully beside her, the man who had promised to protect her, would be the one to kill her. The perfect wedding was over, and the nightmare in paradise was about to begin. The 20-hour journey from San Diego to the Maldives felt like traveling to another world. Emma pressed her face against the small seaplane window as they approached the Four Seasons Resort Landa, Juraveru, her breath catching at the sight below. The Indian Ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, a canvas of impossible blues and greens that seemed too perfect to be real. "Oh my God, Marcus," she whispered, gripping his hand tightly. "It's even more beautiful than the pictures." Marcus smiled, but his eyes were already scanning the resort layout below with the tactical awareness of a police officer. He noted the isolation. They were completely surrounded by water, with the nearest inhabited island barely visible on the horizon. No roads, no easy escape routes, no neighbors to hear anything that might happen in their overwater bungalow. "Just you and me, baby," he said, his voice carrying a satisfaction that Emma interpreted as romantic excitement. No distractions, no interruptions. Complete privacy. The seaplane touched down on the crystal-clear lagoon with barely a splash, and within minutes they were being welcomed by the resort staff with flower leis and champagne. Aisha, their personal butler, was a petite woman from Sri Lanka with a warm smile and impeccable English. "Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, welcome to paradise," Aisha said, her voice melodious with genuine warmth. "We are so honored to host your honeymoon. Your overwater villa is ready, and we have arranged some special touches for your arrival." As they were transported by speedboat to their villa, Emma felt like she was living in a dream. The water beneath them was so clear she could see tropical fish swimming lazily in the coral gardens below. Palm trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and the air smelled of frangipani and salt water. Their overwater bungalow was a masterpiece of luxury, a spacious villa built on stilts over the lagoon, with a private deck, infinity pool, and direct access to the ocean below. The interior was decorated in natural materials and soft whites, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of the endless blue horizon. "This is incredible," Emma breathed, spinning around the main living area like a child in a candy store. "Marcus, can you believe this is ours for 2 whole weeks?" Marcus was examining the villa with a different eye, noting the isolation, the soundproofing, the fact that their nearest neighbors were at least 100 yards away across the water. He walked out onto the private deck and looked around, nothing but ocean in every direction. "Perfect. It's perfect," he said, and meant it in ways Emma couldn't understand. Absolutely perfect. That first evening, they dined on the deck under a canopy of stars, the gentle lapping of waves against the villa's stilts providing a romantic soundtrack. The resort had prepared a special honeymoon dinner. Fresh lobster, tropical fruits, and champagne that sparkled in the candlelight. Emma was radiant with happiness, her skin glowing in the soft light, her eyes bright with excitement as she talked about all the things they would do during their stay. Snorkeling, sunset cruises, couple spa treatments, romantic dinners on the beach. "I want to try everything," she said, reaching across the table to take Marcus's hand. "I want to make the most of every single moment here." Marcus smiled, but Emma didn't notice how his grip on her hand was just a little too tight, how his eyes had a calculating quality as he watched her animated face. "We'll do whatever you want," "Sweetheart, whatever makes you happy." But even on their first night, subtle signs of Marcus's true nature began to emerge. When the waiter, a friendly young man named Rashid, complimented Emma on her dress and asked if they were enjoying their honeymoon, Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My wife is beautiful, isn't she?" Marcus said, his arms sliding possessively around Emma's waist. "I'm a very lucky man, and very protective of what's mine." The words were spoken with a smile, but there was something in Marcus's tone that made Rashid's own smile falter slightly. The young man quickly excused himself, leaving the couple alone on their deck. "He was just being friendly," Emma said, though she felt compelled to defend the innocent interaction. "I know," Marcus replied, his voice returning to its normal warmth. "I just don't like other men looking at my wife the way he was looking at you. You're too beautiful for your own good." Emma laughed, flattered by what she perceived as romantic jealousy. "You're being silly. He was just doing his job." But Marcus wasn't being silly. He was marking his territory, establishing the rules that would govern their time in paradise. Emma was his wife, his possession, and he would not tolerate any man, staff member or otherwise, showing her attention. The next morning, Emma woke to the sound of gentle waves and tropical birds singing outside their villa. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting dancing patterns on the white walls. She stretched luxuriously in the king-sized bed, feeling more relaxed and happy than she had in months. Marcus was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed and checking his phone. Even on their honeymoon, even in paradise, he couldn't completely disconnect from his work. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. "How did you sleep?" "Like a baby," Emma replied, snuggling closer to him. "The sound of the water is so peaceful. I could stay here forever." Marcus's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Forever is a long time," he said, "but we have 2 weeks to make the most of it." As they prepared for their first full day in paradise, Emma was bubbling with excitement about all the activities they could try. The resort offered snorkeling trips, dolphin watching, sunset fishing, and romantic beach picnics. She wanted to experience everything the Maldives had to offer. But Marcus had different ideas about how they should spend their time. When Emma suggested joining a group snorkeling trip, he frowned. "I thought we came here to be alone together," he said. "Why would we want to spend time with strangers when we could have private experiences just for us?" Emma felt a small flutter of disappointment, but she pushed it aside. Marcus was right. This was their honeymoon, their special time together. They could socialize when they got home. "You're right," she said, forcing a smile. "Private is better, more romantic." Marcus's expression softened, and he pulled her into his arms. "That's my girl. I just want to keep you all to myself for a while." "Is that so wrong?" As they prepared for bed in their luxurious villa, Emma felt overwhelmed with gratitude and love. The villa was like something from a fairy tale, with its king-sized bed draped in white mosquito netting, the sound of gentle waves beneath them, and the endless expanse of stars visible through the skylight above their bed. But as she drifted off to sleep, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in Marcus since they'd arrived. He seemed more intense, more possessive, more controlling. She told herself it was just the stress of the wedding and travel, that he would relax once they settled into their honeymoon routine. She had no way of knowing that Marcus was already planning how to make their isolation complete, how to ensure that when the time came, no one would hear her screams. The countdown to tragedy had begun. By their third day in the Maldives, the first cracks in Marcus's perfect facade began to show. Emma woke to find him standing on their private deck, speaking in hushed, angry tones on his phone. His back was rigid with tension, and she could hear fragments of his conversation drifting through the morning air. "I don't care what the captain says," Marcus was saying, his voice low but fierce. "That's not how we handle situations like this. You tell him I said." He noticed Emma watching him and abruptly ended the call, his expression immediately softening into the loving smile she'd grown accustomed to. "Work?" Emma asked, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "Nothing important," Marcus replied, but she could feel the tension still coiled in his muscles. "Just some idiots back home who can't handle things without me." Emma frowned. "I thought you said you were completely off duty for our honeymoon." Marcus turned in her arms, his hands settling on her shoulders with a grip that was just slightly too firm. "I'm off duty. But when you're in law enforcement, Emma, you're never really off. People depend on you. Lives are at stake." There was something in his tone, a hint of irritation, of impatience, that made Emma step back slightly. Of course, I understand. But she didn't understand. The Marcus she'd married had been calm, controlled, always in command of his emotions. This man seemed barely contained, like a pressure cooker about to explode. The incident that would change everything happened that afternoon. Emma had been lounging by their private pool, reading a novel and sipping a tropical drink, when Aisha arrived with fresh towels and a warm smile. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez," Aisha said, her voice as melodious as always. "How are you enjoying your stay?" "It's been absolutely perfect," Emma replied, setting down her book. "This place is like a dream." Aisha beamed. "I'm so glad to hear that. Your husband is very lucky to have such a beautiful wife. You make a lovely couple." Emma blushed at the compliment, but their conversation was interrupted by Marcus's voice, sharp and cold. "What's going on here?" Both women turned to see Marcus standing in the doorway of their villa, his expression darker than Emma had ever seen it. He was wearing only swim shorts, his muscular frame tense with barely controlled anger. "Marcus, this is Aisha, our butler," Emma said, confused by his tone. She was just bringing fresh towels. Marcus's eyes never left Aisha's face. "I can see that. What I want to know is why you're having such an intimate conversation with my wife." Aisha's smile faltered, and Emma felt a chill run down her spine despite the tropical heat. "Marcus, we were just chatting." She was being friendly. "Friendly," Marcus repeated, his voice dripping with disdain. "Is that what we're calling it?" He walked toward them with the predatory grace of a man accustomed to intimidating people. Aisha instinctively took a step back, her hands clutching the towels tighter. "Sir, I was just—" Aisha began, but Marcus cut her off. "You were just what? Flirting with my wife? Making her uncomfortable with your inappropriate comments?" Emma stood up quickly, her heart racing. "Marcus, stop." She wasn't doing anything wrong. But Marcus wasn't listening. His attention was focused entirely on Aisha, who looked genuinely frightened now. "I want you to stay away from my wife. Do you understand me? No more friendly chats. No more compliments. No more anything. You do your job, and you leave." "Marcus," Emma's voice was sharp with shock and embarrassment. "You're being completely unreasonable." Marcus whirled on her, and for a moment, Emma saw something in his eyes that made her blood run cold. Raw, unfiltered rage. The kind of anger that could turn violent in an instant. "Am I?" he asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Am I being unreasonable for protecting my wife from inappropriate behavior?" Aisha had gone pale, her hands trembling as she set the towels down on a nearby chair. "I apologize if I offended you, sir. It was not my intention." "Your intention doesn't matter," Marcus said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "What matters is that you understand your place." Emma felt sick. This wasn't the man she'd married. This wasn't the gentle, protective husband who'd promised to love and cherish her. This was someone else entirely, someone dangerous. "Please excuse me," Aisha whispered, backing toward the door. "I'll send someone else to attend to your villa." After she left, the silence between Marcus and Emma stretched taut as a wire. Emma stared at her husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time since their wedding. "What the hell was that?" she asked, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. Marcus's expression immediately softened, and he reached for her hands. "Emma, sweetheart, I'm sorry. I overreacted." She pulled away from him. "Overreacted? Marcus, you terrorized that poor woman. She was just being nice." I know, Marcus said, his voice taking on the cajoling tone she'd heard him use with suspects during interrogations. "It's just, this job, it makes you paranoid. You start seeing threats everywhere, even when there aren't any." Emma wanted to believe him. She wanted to accept his explanation and go back to their perfect honeymoon. But something had shifted, and she couldn't unsee what she'd just witnessed. She's a woman, Marcus. A small woman who was doing her job. What possible threat could she have been? Marcus's jaw tightened again, and Emma caught a glimpse of that dangerous anger before he controlled it. "You don't understand what it's like, Emma. Being responsible for someone's safety. The constant vigilance. Sometimes I see danger where there isn't any." He moved closer to her, his hands settling on her shoulders again. This time, his grip was gentle, but Emma could feel the strength in his fingers, the ease with which he could hurt her if he chose to. "I love you so much," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "The thought of anyone disrespecting you, of anyone making you uncomfortable, it drives me crazy." Emma looked into his eyes and saw what she wanted to see: love, concern, protectiveness. But underneath, barely contained, was something else, something that made her stomach clench with fear. "I love you too," she said, because it was what he needed to hear. "But Marcus, you can't treat people like that. It's not right." "You're right," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I'll apologize to her. I'll make it right." But even as Emma let herself be held, let herself be comforted by his familiar warmth, she knew that something fundamental had changed between them. The perfect husband she'd married was revealing himself to be something else entirely. And they were still trapped in paradise, with nowhere to run and no one to help her if things got worse. That night, as Marcus slept peacefully beside her, Emma lay awake listening to the gentle lapping of waves against their villa and wondering if she was married to a monster. She had no idea how right she was, or how little time she had left to find out. The incident with Aisha had been a warning sign that Emma chose to ignore, but by their 5th day in the Maldives, Marcus's behavior had become impossible to dismiss. Emma woke that morning to find Marcus already dressed and pacing their villa like a caged animal. His phone was pressed to his ear, and his voice carried the sharp edge of barely controlled fury. "I don't give a damn what the union says," he was snarling into the phone. "That suspect should have been in custody 3 days ago." Emma sat up in bed, alarmed by the venom in his voice. She'd never heard Marcus speak to his colleagues this way before. "Marcus," she said softly, but he held up a hand to silence her without even looking in her direction. He ended the call and threw his phone onto the bed with such force that Emma flinched. When he finally looked at her, his eyes were cold and distant. "Problems at work?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice light. "Problems with idiots who can't function without constant supervision," Marcus replied, his tone clipped and harsh. "Maybe you should take a break from checking in with work," she suggested carefully. "We're supposed to be on our honeymoon." Marcus's head snapped toward her, and for a moment, Emma saw something in his eyes that made her heart race with fear. Pure, undiluted anger, directed at her for the first time. "Maybe you should mind your own business," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "I don't need my wife telling me how to do my job." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Marcus had never spoken to her that way before. She felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was just trying to help." The real breaking point came that afternoon. Emma had been reading on their private deck when she noticed a young couple in the villa next to theirs. The man was tall and athletic, with sun-bleached hair and an easy smile. When he noticed Emma watching, he waved cheerfully. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he called out in an Australian accent. "I'm Dave, and this is my wife Sarah. We're on our honeymoon too." Emma smiled and waved back. "I'm Emma. Congratulations on your wedding." "Same to you," Dave replied. "Your husband around? We should grab drinks sometime." Before Emma could respond, Marcus appeared beside her, as if he'd materialized out of thin air. His presence was so sudden and his expression so dark that Emma actually gasped. "My wife doesn't need to make friends with strange men," Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly across the water. Dave's smile faltered, and Emma felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. "Marcus, he was just being friendly." "Was he?" Marcus interrupted, "because from where I'm standing, it looked like he was hitting on my wife." "Mate, I was just saying hello," Dave said, his tone becoming defensive. "No need to get hostile." Marcus stepped closer to the edge of their deck, his posture aggressive and threatening. "I'll decide what's hostile, and I'm telling you to stay away from my wife." That was the wrong thing to say. Marcus's face went white with rage, and Emma watched in horror as he vaulted over the railing of their deck and into the shallow water between the villas. "Marcus, no!" Emma screamed, but he was already wading toward the other couple's villa with murder in his eyes. Dave scrambled out of the pool, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Well, mate, calm down. I don't want any trouble." But Marcus was beyond reason. He hauled himself up onto Dave's deck, water streaming from his clothes, his fists clenched at his sides. "You think you can disrespect me?" Marcus snarled. "You think you can flirt with my wife right in front of me?" The punch caught Dave in the jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Sarah screamed, and Emma found herself running toward the water, desperate to stop her husband. "Marcus, stop!" she cried, but he was already advancing on Dave again. Marcus grabbed Dave by the throat and slammed him against the villa's glass door. The sound of Dave's head hitting the glass was sickening. "You ever look at my wife again, I'll kill you," Marcus whispered, his face inches from Dave's. By now, other guests had noticed the commotion. Emma could see people gathering on nearby decks, some already reaching for their phones. Marcus seemed to realize the same thing. When his eyes met Emma's, she saw something there that made her blood run cold. This was her fault. In his twisted mind, she was responsible for what had just happened. "We're leaving," Marcus said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Now, as they packed their belongings in tense silence, Emma realized that she was no longer on her honeymoon. She was trapped in paradise with a man who was capable of violence, a man whose love had become a prison. And they were still days away from going home, still isolated in the middle of the Indian Ocean with nowhere to run and no one to help her. The countdown to tragedy was accelerating, and Emma was running out of time. Emma's hands trembled as she folded her clothes into their suitcase, her mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. Marcus had attacked an innocent man in broad daylight, in front of witnesses, and now they were fleeing their honeymoon villa like criminals. The resort management had been surprisingly accommodating when Marcus flashed his police badge and explained that there had been a misunderstanding with another guest. Money and authority had smoothed over the incident, but Emma knew that Dave would need medical attention for his head injury. "We're leaving tonight," Marcus announced, his voice brooking no argument. "I've arranged for a seaplane to take us to Malé, and we'll catch the first flight back to San Diego." Emma looked up from her packing, confusion and fear warring in her chest. "But we still have a week left. Our honeymoon." "Our honeymoon is over," Marcus cut her off, his eyes cold and distant. "Thanks to your behavior." The accusation hit Emma like a physical blow. According to the search results, this was a classic pattern, the victim being blamed for the abuser's actions. "My behavior? Marcus, I was just being polite to another guest." Marcus stepped closer, and Emma instinctively backed away. The movement seemed to satisfy something dark in his expression. "You were flirting," he said, his voice deadly quiet, encouraging him, making me look like a fool in front of everyone. Emma felt the familiar symptoms described in the research: fear, guilt, confusion, the desperate need to placate her abuser. "I wasn't flirting. I would never." "Don't lie to me," Marcus roared, his hand slamming against the wall beside her head. Emma flinched, her body going into the hypervigilant state that victims of domestic violence often experienced. Every muscle tensed, every nerve on high alert, waiting for the next explosion of violence. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words automatic now. "I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression. I didn't mean to." Marcus studied her face, and Emma could see him calculating, measuring her fear and submission. This was about control, about ownership, about reducing her to a possession rather than a person. "That's better," he said finally, his voice returning to its normal tone. "I know you didn't mean to, baby. You're just too trusting, too innocent. You don't realize how your friendliness can be misinterpreted." Emma nodded, playing the role of the chastened wife, but inside she was screaming. The research was clear. This pattern would only escalate. The emotional abuse, the isolation, the control, it was all building towards something worse. As they waited for their transportation, Emma found herself alone on the deck, while Marcus made phone calls inside. The sun was setting over the Indian Ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. It should have been romantic, the perfect end to a perfect honeymoon. Instead, Emma felt trapped in paradise with a man who was becoming more dangerous by the hour. She thought about calling someone, her parents, her best friend Sarah, anyone who might help her. But Marcus had been monitoring her phone usage, and she knew he would see any call she made. Besides, what would she say? That her husband was controlling and jealous? That he'd gotten into a fight with another guest? The seaplane arrived as darkness fell, its lights cutting through the tropical twilight. As they flew away from the resort, Emma pressed her face to the window, and watched the lights of their villa disappear into the darkness. She didn't know it yet, but she would never see another sunrise. The flight to Malé was tense and silent. Marcus sat rigid beside her, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists. Emma could feel the violence radiating from him like heat from a furnace. When they reached their hotel room in Malé, Marcus finally exploded. 6 years, he said, his voice shaking with rage. 6 years I've been building my reputation, my career, my life, and you almost destroyed it all in one afternoon. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, her hands folded in her lap, trying to make herself as small and non-threatening as possible. Marcus, please. Do you have any idea what would have happened if someone had filmed that fight? If it had gone viral? My career would be over. Everything I've worked for gone. He began pacing the small room like a caged animal, his movements sharp and aggressive. Emma watched him with growing terror, recognizing the signs that the research had described. The escalation, the building rage, the moment when emotional abuse would turn physical. I love you, Marcus said suddenly, stopping in front of her. I love you more than anything in this world, but I can't let you destroy me. Emma looked up at him, and what she saw in his eyes made her blood run cold. This wasn't love. This was obsession, possession, the dangerous delusion of a man who saw his wife as property to be controlled rather than a person to be cherished. I would never want to hurt your career, she said carefully. I love you too, Marcus. I want to support you. Marcus knelt in front of her, his hands gripping her wrists with bruising force. Then you need to understand something, Emma. You belong to me. Your body, your mind, your loyalty, it's all mine. And I will do whatever it takes to protect what's mine. The threat was clear, and Emma felt the crushing weight of her situation settle over her like a shroud. She was thousands of miles from home, alone with a man who was capable of violence, a man whose love had become her death sentence. As Marcus pulled her into his arms, Emma closed her eyes and tried to remember the man she'd married. But that man was gone, replaced by someone who would kill her rather than let her go. The countdown to tragedy had reached its final hours, and Emma Rodriguez was running out of time.